Okay, welcome to this little weathering. I don't know if it call it a tutorial or just a tryout, I don't know. But I have been promising to do a 33 for a while. I've got two to choose from. But for the moment I wanted to play around with this. I picked this up the other day. It's an old Bachmann model. It was launched in 1999, so it predates all the normal DCC protocols in terms of being able to be fitted, other than being fitted by hard wiring, which probably something I may well do. So I'm just going to see how this works. It's not my area, it's LNER. The first thing I wanted to do is prepare it in a sense that I could put real coal in later. So I've got this out and taken out. Now there is no way that I can put coal in there very easily. So what I need to do is to razor saw this section off here and then put that back in to the back of the tender, and then I will seal up here, and then I can put real coal in there at some point. So okay, I'm going to crack on with this. I'm going to use the razor saw. I'm going to take this off, glue that in there, and then start preparing this for some airbrushing. These are some of the materials that I use to weather up and do the J39, which you're just about to watch me do. Now here I've got a selection of pre-mixed Humbrol paints, which are blends. They're not pure. They're none of these, apart from the black one here, they're all mixtures of some things. You don't need to have a mass of colours. You just pick a few, those that you sort of can identify with, and make them look something else. And all we're trying to do is, there's three sorts of grime and dirt and frame dirt. This is sort of a yellowish color, this has got more red in it, and this has got a combination of that with a bit more black in it. And this is the pure black that you saw me mix up during the course of the video, and that was pure matte. I think it's number 33. And this is just an amalgam of other colours, giving me some form of initial rust colour. They are what I sort of mixed down, and if I give you the sort of solution, if I can come up to there without pouring this everywhere, you can see that it's quite a thin solution to go through the airbrush and not to clog it. So these are well mixed, shaken, well mixed, and if they stand a little while, they're mixed again. Then I've got the weathering powders. The weathering powders I used are the Humbrol range. I didn't use all of them, although this does show 6. This is not the receptacle I used during the weathering, as you're aware, and I didn't use this one called Sand. The others I did use, and so it's these ones in the front here that got used in that weathering job. And they are iron oxide, rust, smoke, white and dark earth. Now they really do quite well mimic these colours I've mixed here. So that's really what is going on in the video, and you'll see me use all of these during the course of, and I hope you enjoy it. So sit back, look at it, pass any comments, and I'm happy to have comments on this, because I'm not an expert. I just enjoy weathering from my point of view and my perspective as an artist, and I hope you enjoy working along or seeing me work on this one and maybe having a go yourself. All the best for now. I'll talk to you again at the end of the video. Bye bye. Okay, let's get started. Now what I'm doing with the airbrush at the moment is just blowing off any potential bits of dirt and dust that I couldn't get to with the brush or any other method. So that's what that was about, and just clearing it off and making sure it's as clean as I possibly can. Now I'm loading the airbrush with just some of that gunge, some of that grungy colour, the yellowish colour or the reddish colour. It's sort of that dirty frame dirt, and the only reason for it is a bit like I'm going to refer to doing a lot of painting during the course of this airbrushing, because it really is just like laying down a canvas, that I'm preparing the surface. This is a dulling down of the locomotive. It's all black and all very, very plasticky, and I want to get rid of that before I move on. So the idea being that once this is on as an overall color, it flattens the image, it flattens the locomotive visually and keeps some of that shiny blackness of the production model away. And you can see as I turned it then that you've got very distinctly two different areas. You've got the sort of dirt coming in, and you've still got that very dark plastically look. So now if I ramble on during this, I'm not used to doing a voiceover for a model railway video. I'm used to doing voiceovers for some of my painting videos, and on those I have to sort of talk a lot about colors, color mixing, and all these different things. That's probably the last thing you need to hear from me on this now. So if I do go quiet, I'll try and replace any lengthy times with a bit of music. But the idea is for you to see what I'm doing and the why I'm doing it. And you can see, for instance, now that I'm putting in the airbrush strokes in an up, well, actually a downward motion. You know, the airbrush is delivering paint. It's a dual action airbrush, and it's sort of going upwards and downwards, which is the direction of travel that the way dirt would be washed off of a locomotive by the rains, and any staining would be done in that way. So you're not going to do an airbrush going lengthwise along the loco, not normally. You can get away with that on the wheels and the underframe and some of the chassis, but generally on the bodywork you need to keep that going upwards and downwards. Now I purposely didn't put any Maskol or any other masking fluid on the bit of glazing on the front of the cab, because I wanted to take that off at each juncture, so it looks like the cab windows need a little bit of a clean, but they have been wiped enough to see through by the driver and the fireman and crew. So that's what I've done. I've deliberately just taken off excesses of paint, but equally as much you can remove more later on if you wish to. I've just gone in with a little bit more now, and just another color, just one of the other grungy ones, just to mix it up a little bit. I'm constantly looking and searching for little bits to add to. Have I covered it correctly here? Do I need a bit more there? And I don't know enough personally about the way let's say an engine should look in terms of all that there's this little bit here and it would have had that sort of dirt coming out there. I'm learning as I go, and I'm looking, as we all should. If we are modeling, we should all look at the different photographs of indeed this one here, this J39. I researched online, I looked at lots of different photographs, and I found some that were still working but not in scrapyard condition, or not that close to the end of their lives, but nonetheless, sorry, they have been heavily used and in heavy traffic, and they are sort of in pretty desperate need of a bit of TLC and a bit of loving care, and I'm sure they were. It's just, you know, the way it looks. Now I'm sort of tweaking and adding a little bit more refinements, a little bit of extra color along joints and on the wheels and underframe, which will get cleaned off later, those wheels, so not to worry about that. All the time I'm watching and checking, and I'm not sort of leaving anything to chance. I'm actually putting in a little bit of that rusty color that you saw me mix up now, and I'm paying attention to things like the areas of the back of the tender where over a long period of time water would have drained down. It would have caused some rusting effects to the paintwork on top of the tender and in the coal area, and you saw where I'd glued back the compartment of the coal, so that will now be ready when I come to it to receive a measure of coal when I get to it. I'm working a little bit finer. The brush is very, very close to the object being sprayed, and I'm really careful not to apply too much pressure. And using an airbrush in this fashion really is something that takes a bit of time. It's people say it's very skillful. Yes, it is, but it's only born of lots of practice. A single action airbrush is pretty simple to operate. A dual action, where you pull and push down to get the right amount of airflow to pick up the correct amount of material to come through, takes a little bit more care and skill to understand or perfect. Now, I'm by no means a great airbrush person. I've used them in my painting over the years. In fact, until I started getting back into model railways, I never ever used an airbrush for so many years. I had several of them that I inherited from an artist friend of mine who sadly passed away 20 years ago now, and he was a major artist. In fact, he did loads of book jackets, and I think he did the book jackets for the Isaac Asimov series of books, or at least some of them, I understand. He was an aviation artist, and a brilliant one to that, but he had tons of airbrushes. Some were actually built for him personally, and I inherited those. So this is one of those, and I'm very, very glad that after all these years of having them, that I'm actually giving them good use once more, and I'm sure Gordon would be very pleased to know that they are being used. But that aside, I digress. You can see what I'm doing to that window. I'm using a cotton bud. I'm just taking off the excess. Now what I'm mixing up is some pure black. I didn't actually have any mixed up prior. This is the Humbrol black. It's the matte version. I think it's number 33. And I'm going to show you how I mix it up. I do mix up a quantity ahead of time. I just hadn't got any black at this juncture, so I'm making amends. I use a dropper. I use white spirit. It's quite crude. It's not good for your health. And there are other odorless thinners that you can buy. And indeed, there are certain things that you can put through an airbrush that are not mineral thinners at all, and therefore a lot safer for you. And I'm actually looking into a product called Zestip, which is one that I use for painting, and it works very well as a dilutant and brush cleaner for oil painting. It may well be that it can work and go through an airbrush, and if that's the case, it might well be a lot safer than airbrushing with mineral spirits, which is extremely dangerous on the respiratory system and very carcinogenic overall. So that all out the way, I've mixed up my black, and I'm just going to start looking at certain areas along the top there and running it down the sides and around the steam. I'm not sure, forgive me, I'm not sure about all the different names and aspects, but I think the top end is the firebox there, and I'm blackening that off. Often I see a lot of locomotives where that area of the bodywork is blackened, where the rest of the body will be painted greens, greys, or whatever livery that locomotive have. So I'm putting in that black now, but I did get a little heavy with it, and I sort of pressed it a little bit too much and got a bit of an excess run of paint. Now, I could have dealt with that in a couple of ways. I could have taken it back, taken it off, and started over, and I dabbed it back and took the excess away. But once that dries off a bit, and as long as you're not too crude with doing that, you'll get away with it, and it will spray up quite happily after that. So I'm just working my way along the parts of the body. Forgive me, it's a cylinder, I think. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm going to get tons of comments telling me what bits I'm getting and what bits I'm not doing and calling the right names. I do need to do some homework on how a locomotive is put together.
I enjoy modeling them, I enjoy painting them, and I enjoy seeing them go round on my layout. I must confess, I do not know from an engineer's point of view too much about what the various aspects are called. In time, I probably will. And some of my closer friends might be astounded at my newfound knowledge one day, but it's certainly not going to astound them at the moment. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, I'm sort of constantly looking, and you can see me working the airbrush. You can see the airflow as I'm going up and down, gently up and down, to mimic a lot of the dirt that would have come out of the chimney at the front as it goes all the way along, travels back along the locomotive and across the top of the cab. And I'm just adding a few area and accents of that dark colour, especially in underneath where the cylinders are and where it sort of sits above the chassis. I think I've got that right. Yeah, and all the time I'm just looking, and when I'm doing that, I'm not thinking, oh, that should have this and that should have that. I'm just thinking how I would expect to see, or what I would think dirt would be, where it might lay, and thinking sort of not out of the box, but logically, I suppose is the better way of putting it, how dirt may lay on the locomotive. And I'm just treating this as a painting. I'm working over the whole thing at once. And when I teach all my students at the gallery about painting, one of the biggest things that they tend to do is they start in one corner and work their way through and get to the other corner and it's finished. But the problem with that is that they would have learned something between one corner and the next. So I teach them to work over the whole painting and build it all up together, so that when they come to the last brush mark, that is the sum total of all their knowledge on that whole painting right there. So it's no different to this locomotive. I'm putting all my efforts into bringing it together, but not trying to finish the front before I do the sides, before I do the back, before I do the top. It's all being built up together. So the whole thing at the end of the day will be an accomplished end and the sum total of all the knowledge at that point. I'm getting off the ball here. I'm using Humbrol weathering powders. I'm using the white, the oxide, and or the rust, sorry, and I'm using the dirt one and the soot one, or the darks. I don't necessarily worry about what they are. I'm just looking at the colours, you know. And here I'm trying to mimic the idea of dirty ash, where it's been drawn out and blown up against the front of the coal area, where it's all burnt, a little bit of rust where it's been neglected, and around the edge of the doors where it's been caught and rubbed and scratched, all these little things. But I don't just leave it at that. I am actually trying to tone each thing down. So you put one colour on, but you don't just leave that one colour. You blend with other colours. And it's a bit like using a limited palette, really. I'm using all the colours that I have to generate all the various different colours that I feel that I might need to complete, in this case, the locomotive weathering, in other times, a painting. But you don't tend to have tons and tons and tons of colours. Otherwise, you just end up with a very dirty mess that doesn't actually say an awful lot. I think that now I'm just going to let you watch, and you can draw your own conclusions from the colours that I'm using. You know the colours that I got on the palette. I'm going to let the music play. This is speeded up somewhat, so this is not quite real time. I think I've used double time on this, so it's not so fast that you can't follow it, but it's a little bit less than trying to watch me put every brush mark in place. But draw your own conclusions. I'll put some music to this and I'll come back a little later. I believe what I'm been doing there are the sort of white water, or not the white, the chalky calcium deposits of water from what I believe are drainage cocks or valves on the side, and they're on each side. And also I shall probably do those of the whistles at the top and put those in later on, just at least a suggestion of them. But even though I put the white on, I'm also toning it back, and where I hit the handrail, I'm taking that off at the same time. I'm also putting the handrail initially into a darker value so that you can see that the handrail is there and it's a different paint job than the livery of the locomotive, or at least it's dirtier, grubbier or whatever. So there's signs of rust, there's signs of use, and I'm not trying to be rude by saying neglect, but you know, there would have been some of that too. So I'm just trying to suggest that wear and tear factor on the rails and pipe work that run along the side of this engine. And they also help to make it stand out and pick it out, and yeah, I think it looks quite nice for it. And whether it's correct, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be people out there that can point me in the right direction. Equally, where I feel water's been laying, I'm putting little bits of rust. You know, it's not heavy rust, it's that sort of rust bloom that you get over time where it's sort of just coming through the paintwork and it's not peeling it back. It's not like that. But it's where the water's been laying and running, and I'm also putting it along the bottoms of doors, and I'll also do the panel and edges and around the bottom of the tender. You know, they are sort of sheet pieces of metal, and they will fold under and they will be riveted or whatever they're done to, but they will show signs of rust. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just looking at it and just adding bits to where I think, you know, like the steps right there where, you know, constantly in use and any paint would have rubbed off, and unless they're going to go in the shop and have a complete overhaul and a real paint job on them, they're going to show signs of rust. The one thing I'm not too sure about, and again I invite your comments, is on the back of the tender there are the edges. I think they're the sort of springs or the brake areas by or next to the wheels. I think I should be putting some grease or some shinier wet looking material that suggests that they are greased up and in that fashion. I haven't done it, and I didn't do it at the end of this video or by the end of this video, so it might be something that I need to pop back into and add that at a later stage. One thing is, I do like my rusty looking colours. I gotta say, I use them, and some of you might say overuse them. I don't think so. I'm quite happy to see that real degradation and use and sort of impactive dirt and grime and rust and all these different things. But each time I do it, you can see I put the rust colour on, but then I actually go back in with darker material in this case and tone it back down. So I just don't leave it, I blend it, I mix my colours so that it tones it down and gives it a more subtle look. This is just a bit more of that rust where the water's flushed over the top constantly when it's been filled and left and overfilled, or where the filler pipe has been dragged off the side of the locomotive tender and dragged down, and of course you're not going to go running behind it and wipe down every time water lays there, but eventually it'll have an effect. The one thing that I didn't really want to do is have such a scanty look at weathering this. Every weathering job I've done so far, and I've done a few now, most of them I've kept. Some of the derelict ones I've sold on eBay, but most of them I've kept because they were my first ones or my initial ones. I like them, and I still like them running around. In fact, I've got my very, very first one was a 9F, and unfortunately I can't DCC it. We tried. We put a chip in it and hardwired it, but it just didn't fancy running properly. So I took the plate out and we put it back to DC. So it really is just an ornamental piece, but I won't get rid of it because I just love what I did to it. And it was I think my very first locomotive that that wasn't wrecked, as it were. It was my first one, albeit an old one. It was my first one I had to go at, so I don't want to get rid of it for that reason. But every one I do now is a view to learning more, doing more, and enjoying this process of painting. As I do on canvas, I'm now painting on three-dimensional objects, and I find that is just a fascinating thing to be doing. It's what drives me to do more weathering and more modeling. And over time, there'll be things like dioramas that I create, and it's going to be using all these sorts of things. I just love to take something and change it from the new and the look, or if indeed I've built it myself, to take it from the bare bones of a piece of card and end up something looking really beautiful that can sit with pride on my layout. Bit more rust going in there, not too much. And they're going to have I'll say that again. You can never have too much rust. I joke. But I love it. I just love the effect. And, you know, I was never around to see locomotives in this state. And I'm just thankful that there are so many people that were and had the sort of foresight to take and record them in photographs. I only wish that colour film was around a lot sooner and available to people on a much broader scale than it was. But nevertheless, once you get to understand the way these colours look, then even a black and white photograph can be interpreted in terms of colour. And as an artist, we often work with tonal factors and tonal photographs before we add colour. It allows us to see the degree of contrast in an object, so it can be interpreted from many black and white photographs in many, many books on the subject. I'm putting some real dirty coal residues and grime over the top of the tender, running down the sides. A lot of it be where water's run down, but I'm deliberately running it through a couple of the letters, like this one now on the N, so that it shows that, you know, it doesn't take prisoners when it comes to lovely lettering on the side of a loco. Dirt will run where it's going to run, and it's just nice little accent to put it through some of the lettering too. Not on each one, just one will do, just enough to dirty that particular letter up, and also the spread of the dirt beneath it, where the water's come down, brought the dirt down, and it's spread along the little access footplate there, or whatever that happens to be. And so, yeah, you just got to think the way that water will deliver dirt and leave it once the water's evaporated, and just leave the dirt to dry. Now I'm paying attention to the front end again. It's almost like you just go around the first time with the airbrush, and then you refine a little bit more with the airbrush, so that's the second pass. And then you go over with the initial weathering powders, that's a third pass. And every time I keep going around, I'm adding a little bit more detail here, a little subtle accent somewhere else, and just changing what I see as I feel it's needed to be done. One thing I have done is I've done the wheels as they are in situ. Now there is a little bit of each wheel that is hidden. It's not such a worry on the tender, but certainly those driving wheels will need to be looked at. So out or off of camera, I will be looking at just running those wheels round just a shade and weathering the top sections of them before I clean the whole thing. So that's something that if you think I've forgotten, I actually haven't forgotten it. It will be done off camera, but it's just too much to try and sort that out at this stage in the process. But it wasn't forgotten. I've just got a little bit of thinner on the brush, and I'm just taking off the number. I'm just clearing it, so if someone's gone along there with a bit of grease and lubricated and got rid of the dirt, so that the number on the front of the buffer beam can be seen at distance, which it should be shown equally as much if all the running numbers were covered up with dirt. Often one of the engine or crew would have just gone over with some sort of cleaning rag, and just, even if they did no more, just made those evident and obvious so that it could be seen. And you can see where I've just done that on the front of the buffer beam, just enough to see it. Now I'm toning down the smokestack just a little bit. Bit of white on there. Be careful with white too. It's a cooling factor. White in painting, in any painting, whether it's this or on a canvas, it doesn't matter. White is very opaque and very cooling, so it can knock things back down. But if you want a bit of ash residue, dirt, stuff, it's just built for it. That's what it's for. It's good. I'm just picking out little bits of detail now, both on the handles, you know, the grab handles and all those sort of bits and pieces. And where I've lost bits, I feel that it needs a bit more strength. I just put a bit more back in. So there's nothing serious in that regard. Now I'm putting in a little bit of metal coat paint from Humbrol, and it's just putting on the end of a cotton bud, and it gives me those grease marks on the buffers, which are obviously evident. Right, so I'm going to put some coal in here. First off, I want to just rust up the side. I actually forgot to do that, and I just wanted to put some. It doesn't matter about going over the whole base, it's just up round the areas that will not necessarily have coal on them. Just take that off of there and turn it around so you can see. And because I didn't do this, I'm just going to come down with a little bit of weathering in here. Back into the rest of this. It's in two colours, the light rust and the darker rust, or the redder colour. And just put some on the, make it a variation. Okay, so I'm going to give that a very quick, get that out of the way, just a very quick bit of matte varnish just to seal it in. Bit too much. Okay, so now for my coal load. Now I have crushed coal, which I've crushed myself. I don't know if it's actually prototypically dead on correct, but there were some gigantic lumps in some of the coals that were seen. So I'm just going to put some in and see what it looks like. I just need to totally cover the base, but not make such a full load as one often sees. So it will obviously be shooting down to the hopper. And I want to leave some of the back. I don't know if you can see that, just a little bit of the back exposed, so it looks like the coal is sort of needing replacement, or topping up should I say. And I will just very quickly, where I'm leaving that, just make it a little bit more obvious. A bit of rust there. That may stay or may get lost with the when I put the ISO on, but I quite like that look. May even sort of put a couple of pieces maybe that have just got knocked. They may stay there, may not.
Alright, let's get that safely out of the way. What I'm going to do now is just douse this with ISO. Okay. Now that will able to, I'll take that out. It'll be cold, isn't it? Now this is 50/50 PVA with a little bit of washing liquid in it. That should be enough. Sometimes find that little bit on top. There you go. So that's going to sit there now for the night, and hopefully then I'll come back and it'll be finished off nice and clear. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm sure you got something from it. I certainly enjoyed weathering this loco for you. I just wanted to stop off and show you this part here. You never actually saw the end where the coal had dried, and a little bit of weathering just to get over the shiny parts of the PVA glue. So that's been done, it's been sealed off, and it's now finished. Now I am looking at a couple of things that I may have to alter. There may be something on there. I might need to put some damp grease marks on those, and if that's the case, then please tell me in the comment section below. And indeed, if there's anything you feel that I have missed on this loco, or indeed if you've enjoyed it and think I've done a good job, please let me know in the comments. You know how to do that. I'd be pleased to read them. Hopefully they'll be nice ones, and I can answer each and every one of them. I've enjoyed this anyway, and the point is, each and every loco that you do, or in my case would do, I will learn from and take that on into the new one. It's no different to myself as a painter. Every painting I do, I learn something from, and I take that on into a new painting with me. And that's how my career as an artist has grown. And so too, my not so much career, but my hobby and my interest in railway modelling, both in terms of the layout and also the learning how to weather and do more on the locos, and then also dioramas. That's another area that I want to get into quite heavily, creating nice dioramas, because I enjoy that sort of thing. I love that sort of modeling, and I also want to test out many ideas and theories that I've seen on YouTube and those that I develop myself for Sandling Junction later. So before I ramble on too long, because it's already a long video, glad you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did. And don't forget the comment section below. Put those in and share, like, whatever you like on this video. But moreover, if you're not a subscriber, please think about subscribing. It helps me grow the channel, helps me know that all this work that goes into creating these, and it's no mean feat, these take time, not just to model or do the weathering or to run them and film them, but also the editing too. So it's nice to know that it's appreciated, and subscriptions from you is one way of showing that appreciation. All the best to you. Catch you all in the next video very, very soon. Bye for now. Happy modeling, and hope all your trains run smoothly. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button and add your comments. They'd be very welcome and always answered. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button now. And for your information, there's another video there and another video there. All the best. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye-bye for now. Bye.